Hello there folks, and welcome back to another video, and good morning from where we would have left off from last night, pretty much looking at the exact same spot. You know, the light this morning is just so soft and so beautiful, and you can see as the sun starts to come out, it's beginning to catch on these mountains and these rocks down here. So I thought this morning I'd keep things nice and simple, 20 seconds away from the van, so I left the bag there. All I have with me is the 100 to 400 and variable ND. So I'm just playing around, just focusing in on some of these lovely rocks that you see popping up out of the water, and playing around with some shutter speeds. And then behind us here, I can take a few pictures of this kind of stuff down here. Just really this morning, just going to focus in on some nice intimate seascape, sea stack scenes. And it's really shaping up absolutely wonderful. And as my phone goes off there, it's the wildest notification. And, you know, one of the things that I was wanting to say is it's really wonderful having the opportunity to be here and to have a very small little camper van that we have. It really lends itself well for landscape photographers to be able to come and camp overnight at places that are just so magical. And it's one thing that I really appreciate and have been doing for many years. Anyways, let's fire on, see if we can get a few nice pictures, and let's go from there. All right, the day begins and a new adventure starts. So I am super happy with how the first set of images from this wonderful morning went. And as you can see from this very first one we're looking at, the light was so beautiful, and slowing down that shutter speed enabled me to create this real ethereal set of images. Changing to a portrait orientation now for this next shot. Again, we have this wonderful play of light and shadow and warm and cold. A real accentuation of that warm light balanced with that cool shadows. And as I rambled on in the piece to camera, focusing in on one singular point really lends itself well to create these real unique images and scenes that will never really be captured again. As the water crashes and bashes and ebbs and flows off this big rock, it really captures moments in time that for me and you now looking at this image will never be seen again. And the last image of this set was from behind where we were just looking. There was a wonderful line of rocks that just balanced right in the center of the frame, and as the water came and crashed over, it really created this wonderful scene. And after taking many different types of pictures, messing around with different shutter speeds and compositions, this is the one that I ultimately settled on. Again, has this really lovely kick of light, and the slow shutter dragging the water almost creates this natural vignette that really draws the eye to the center of the frame and up through as the water cascades and crashes off of these rocks. You know, one of the things I enjoy most, one of the things I enjoy most about photographing these kinds of scenes is the abstract nature of them is just so fascinating. You can get this random lump of rock that just pops up out of the ocean, and as the waves crash and break over it, they just create this whole unique landscape onto their own. You get these tiny little cascades of water that come off the edge. It's just wonderful, and I really do enjoy photographing those kinds of things. As I say, it's a real treat to be able to find such unique landscape and there use the water to create an even further unique kind of scene. It's a really great opportunity as a photographer to photograph those kinds of things. So fingers crossed they work out, and let's fire on. Well, what an absolutely wonderful start to the day. Back here now. So as I pause on this wonderful derp face, you may be questioning, why have we stopped here? Yes, the battery ran out in the camera. I've probably saved you some of my crazy ramblings, but I was essentially just showing you the little van that we have and where we were off to next. Hence the reason why the transition from this first location to the second location is a bit jumpy. Let's move on to the next bit. The middle of the day, it's around 10 to 1. Not ideal conditions for landscape photography, but nonetheless we're here taking some photographs and do some location scouting at the same time. We did come here for a shipwreck kind of idea, but that didn't really work out too well.
And now just looking down this stretch of coastline is just pure magic. You got these wonderful sea stacks that are standing out on their own, and the absolutely gorgeous set of cliffs that run up along the side here, and with some nice light in the evening time could prove to be an absolutely wonderful place to take some photographs. I know I just said a second ago that it was not ideal conditions for landscape photography. You know, that's quite a defeatist attitude that I have there. And I thought to myself, let's make them ideal conditions for landscape photography. So what I've done is I've actually taken out the 100 to 400mm lens, and I've put on that variable ND filter that I was using this morning in order to darken down the scene so I can increase the shutter, which will essentially give us a great opportunity to take some nice long exposures. That's one thing that I could impart to you, if you will, is that slowing down your shutter and embracing this moody scene really lends itself well to long exposure photography, particularly when you're looking at these kinds of sea stacks here that we have off in the distance as well. Really allows us to isolate the scene and to just slow down that shutter speed and to really bring the scene to life using the motion in the water and then that dragged out shutter speed. So let's fire away and see what we can do. So I'm actually shooting at around 8 seconds, which is really wonderful and giving me a fantastic opportunity to really drag out this white water, and it's creating some incredible atmosphere. I'm super delighted. One thing that I wanted to mention was that when you've got a scene like this that has potential for small little bits of rock that are popping up out of the water and then larger and larger, and one thing you got to be super careful about is your frame. It's always worthwhile to take an extra second or so just to check the edges of the frame to make sure that there's nothing, you know, ridiculously out of the ordinary sticking up out of the bottom or sticking in from the left or the right or whatever. Just to give you an idea, just to slow down a little bit, make sure that your composition is nice and set and that the edges of your frame are nice and empty, if you will. Obviously you have creative control to be able to do what you like, but for me, at least with this particular scene, the first image that you're going to look at right now was the first composition, and you can see that it's just a tiny bit cluttered around the edges. But this particular composition that we've had, I've just zoomed out ever so slightly, and it's just given all of these individual elements to the water room to breathe and ultimately to set the composition a bit more nicely. So super duper happy with the way this is turning out, and let's take another couple more and see if we can get some good ones.
So this is the final image after processing. I know it may not look like a great deal has changed from the previous example that I just gave you. All I did was just some selective contrast just to help draw the eye through the frame from each of those individual rocks that you see protruding from the misty water. Here's a very good example of me not heeding my own advice. While I do like the idea of this one big central focal point to the frame, it's the edges of this image that kind of kill it for me. Still super happy with how the image turned out, and a very good exercise in not convincing yourself that the middle of the day is a bad time to take photographs. Anyway, with no transitional B-roll filmed, onwards we go to the next location. Burp.
Well, what an absolutely marvelous scene we have found ourselves in. We still have maybe a few hours or so before the sun sets and before we kind of ultimately get to where we're looking to get to for later this evening. I don't know about the sky conditions, but hopefully the image I have planned for later this evening will negate the fact that we don't have any epic skies, but we shall wait. But for now, look at this wonderful scene. Got this absolutely beautiful blue jetty that leads out into this lake that ultimately, or river I should say, that leads out into the ocean. This is the Mira River. And across the way you've got this really old fort, so it really lends itself well for nice leading lines. And what I've ultimately chosen to do is I have the polarizer on. I'm shooting at about 35mm. Got the 10-stop neutral density filter on just to slow down the water. Probably shooting at around 30 seconds or so. The very long exposure theme to this video today. But yeah, no, it's really wonderful scene. So I've taken 3 different compositions so far. So I'd be very curious to know in the comments below, as a cheap plug to leave a comment, which you like the most.
So here is the first of these 3 compositions that I mentioned. A very classic and easily spottable composition, using the jetty as the main leading line that ultimately takes your eye through the entire frame and across into the background. Moving ever slightly to the left side of the jetty, we start to introduce more balance to the scene. Again, the jetty is acting as a leading line that takes your eye all the way through from right to left of the image and ultimately across to the fort beyond. It is no coincidence that I put this particular image last, as I think for me, this is my favorite of the 3. The frame feels balanced, and again, the blue jetty leading your eye across to the fort, which is now much more visible on the left side of the frame. Whereas the previous image, I found the posts of the jetty to be a bit cluttered. So for me, this comes across as more of a minimalist composition. Even though there is still quite a lot happening, we can enhance that intention by using the slow shutter speed.
One thing I forgot to mention in my previous rambling about this scene is that I have actually taken 2 separate exposures. Because there is a bit of movement in this river that you can see, when you shoot at around 30 seconds, I'll pop up the kind of first and second images as a comparison for you here now. You'll notice that there is a fair bit of movement in the jetty itself. So what I've done is I've taken a second exposure, which is probably at around 1/200th of a second, just to try and get a nice sharp image of the jetty itself. I'll try blend those 2 together to try and create the final images that you would have seen just a moment ago. So my blending abilities are a bit crap, so let's keep our fingers crossed that they have turned out, and yeah, let's keep going. Well, look where we find ourselves for this absolutely gorgeous evening that is setting. It is wonderful. This location really has to be timed with the tide and the time of the sun setting. So as the water has receded, it has revealed this absolute wonder of leading lines and just absolutely turning into pure gold right now. It's really wonderful. The aim of the game here is to kind of try and get as low as possible, use some of these ridges, if you will, as leading lines. So we're going to focus stack, and we're also going to exposure blend each of these focus stacked images, because as you can see, we're shooting right into the sun, so the dynamic range is going to be quite wide, so we need to account for that. At the moment, I do have a circular polarizer on, and I also have the soft grad filter just to help try balance those exposures. I have taken a few different compositions, and the one that I've settled on now, I'm just going to sit on and wait. We've got about 25 minutes before the sunset, so let's chill, let's relax, let's all enjoy it, and let's see if we can make some magic. So one of the things that you really want to look for when you're in a position like this, as absolutely marvelous as this is, it can tend to run away on you. You really do need to stop and slow down and really take in your surroundings in order to hone in on the composition that you want. The whole idea behind a scene like this is to just use these ridges to act as a leading line which they are doing so wonderfully. And as the sun sets, the light is getting so soft, and I'm really hoping that small little break in the cloud out there, I'm really hoping the sun peeks through just to cast a nice bit of golden light on all of this. Would really add the cherry on top to this whole scene. And then after the sun maybe sets, maybe in say another 10 minutes, I might pick up the camera, rush around and try grab one or two more compositions. So let's keep our fingers crossed and hope all this works.
The final image that I captured from this absolutely magnificent location. You might be thinking, why has he got a polarizer on? The reflections that I was hoping for didn't really materialize as I had envisioned them. So therefore I thought, instead of trying to force a shot, I would embrace. And as you can see, the polarizer really helped cut through the glare to reveal all of the wonderful patterns and textures that this scene has to offer.
I am now just playing around with, I put the 10 stop on to see if I can get any motion out of the clouds at all, to see if I can add some kind of dramatic skies to the scene. I don't know how well it's going to work out, but sure, look, that's half the fun really, isn't it? Experimenting and seeing what we can get. So let's keep our fingers crossed. We might need to wait for the sun just to dip a small bit lower, just so we can kind of not have those highlights completely blown out. So let's keep our fingers crossed.
So for the last scene of the video, this is more closely what I had in mind in relation to the reflections that I was ultimately looking for. After the sun had set a little bit more, that heavy glare from the previous scene was no longer there. Removing the polarizer really then helped to accentuate these reflections. This for me is a great example of overcoming challenges when out in the field taking landscape photography images. We all know we need to consistently adapt and change any preconceptions that we might have in relation to images we want to capture.
Well folks, what an absolutely incredible end to this whole evening and day. It's just been an absolutely wonderful day of photography, and the last couple of days in general have just been really great. It's been a real treat to get out and, you know, get away from where we live and get in the van again and explore like we always enjoy doing so much. So I think we'll pretty much sign off from here. I'm very happy with how everything went, so fingers crossed that all works in the editing room at the end of the day, and you guys actually get to see a video that has come together in some coherence. And I hope the last couple of days that you guys have followed along with us on this photography journey has been worthwhile. And yeah, I think the usual: subscribe, like, all that other fun stuff, and I'm gonna see you on the next one. Take it easy, guys. Everyone.